Today we have Father Bryce Lungren, and he writes for Catholic Rural Life, a cause close to my heart as being originally a farm girl. It promotes Catholic life in rural America. And we're talking about a homily he gave, but they post these online as articles. We must guard against greed in our lives. Good morning, Father Lundgren. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fine. Hey, before we
Great.
jump into this, can you tell me how you got connected to Catholic rural life?
Well, we live in rural Wyoming. It's about as rural as we can get, and I'm from here. Our
Uh-huh.
family goes way back to pioneers that came out here from the east. And
Wow.
anyway, so I kind of live. I have that background, and so my priesthood is, pretty kind of lined with rural life stuff. Just I've got a
Yeah.
couple horses, and we still do ranch stuff, and so I've been associated with them for quite a while. But here recently, they reached out and wanted to partner on a few more things.
Yeah, well, that's great, and I do love I love your homilies; they're wonderful. And so I want
hmm
to talk about the one guard against greed, right? So,
hmm
how the idea here you draw on Luke's parable, which I love because it's about I'm going to build bigger barns and all of
hmm
those kinds of things.
Yeah,
So, how do you define greed for our audience? Because I think people know what it is, but they don't really have a definition in their head.
sure. Yeah, I agree. I think, homilies and writing, they give you the opportunity to kind of like, flesh things out a little bit more. So, yeah, we
Yes.
know what greed is, but what is it defined as? And it is more or less like a disordered desire for riches, for things, for luxury. It's a disordered desire towards them. So that can be helpful, I think, in then correcting the vice into a virtue. So it's disordered. So how do I properly order it? So with, like, let's just say riches, how are they properly ordered? How
Yeah.
are the luxuries in life properly ordered? And so then I would just say that, well, they're a means to an end, to a greater good. And what often happens in the disordered desire is they become an end in themselves. Like, I stop there at the
Okay.
riches or the things instead of
Okay.
seeing them as a means to a greater good, a better end, in the service of God, we would say ultimately.
And so you talk about that as being idolatry. I don't think a lot of people, when they think of greed, think of it as idolatry, but it certainly is. Can you explain that?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is fun to even flesh it out more because, homilies, I'm just like every day, homily, homily, homily.
Right.
You're doing them all the time. So I got to reach back. I'm like, okay, I said that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I meant. But, really, I think what you'd say is, I mean, just about everything is a means to an end. Like,
Mm,
God is the end, the telos, the purpose, right? And so
right.
pretty much everything in life, you could nuance it, I'm sure, but as a means toward that end. And if something becomes an end in and of itself, it does become a god. It does become a form of idolatry. Money is the penultimate example of that. I mean, you cannot serve both God and mammon, right?
Right.
And and so money is a piece of paper, man. It is nothing in and of itself. It's a means to an end. I use it to buy something, but I can
Right.
stop short there. I guess what ultimately this happens with greed and stuff is that then I find my security in that. I find my
Ah,
security in riches and wealth instead of God. So
I
that'd be
like
a
that.
form of idolatry, I'd say.
Yeah, I like that idea of finding your security in something, kind of where you rest, where you feel safe. You feel safe then when you have
hmm
all this money. So,
Yeah.
one of the things, Father, I think that people struggle with, and you do hear sometimes, Catholics tend to have um, be people of not all people, but I think of people like Tom Monahan, who was you may not be familiar with him, but he is, very wealthy man, and yet lived very modestly himself and used his money for other great causes. So how do you kind of counsel parishioners or people that come to you and are worried that maybe they're into having too much stuff, especially after hearing this parable that you talk about. And also, you hear that, it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. So Christ is always putting that out there in front of us. So how do you kind of counsel people when they're worried about, is my stuff, do I have too much stuff? How do I know?
Yeah. Well, I think, okay, let's just maybe just draw one principle. I'd say stewardship. Okay, so
Okay.
stewardship, encompasses Tom Manahan and you and I, or wherever. The whole spectrum, we're all called to be stewards of God's great gifts. And, the old covenant was tithing, right? 10%
Right.
kind of deal was to God. And so, Jesus did away with tithing. He did away with the 10%, and he upped it to 100%, right? Everything I have is God's. Okay, now how do I become a steward of that? And I think that's more of a perspective of going through life that can allow us to see that everything is a gift. It's all given to me, big or small. Now, how do I use it for the greater glory of God and the building up of his kingdom? And that may involve taking my family out to dinner, So it's not just all poverty stuff. It's all a gift. Now, how do I use it for a greater good?
And so is part of that the ability to detach in a way from material goods? You have them, but you're still detached?
Yeah, fair enough. Let's see. So, yeah, I think going back to that gift, it's a gift, and gifts freely come, they freely go, and we tend to want to cling to them. Okay, I receive it, but I don't want to let it go, and whatever that looks like. But I think true receptivity is that kind of open-handed posture. I freely receive from the Lord, but I can freely give. So, I can give it when he calls it, whatever it needs it. So it's a detached disposition, and we got to work towards that. I would say the one virtue that can really help us with that is gratitude. So if I'm continually thankful, I'm continually receiving, but I'm not clinging, and I can freely give as well. So it's a good proactive stance towards stewardship is gratitude.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you, Father. You are so clear in trying to parse this out for people, and I really appreciate you taking time on this Tuesday morning to be with us.
Well, God bless you. Thank you. Keep up the good work.
All right, you too. Our guest today was Father Bryce Lungren, and he gives some great insights. You can understand them. He's very clear, and you can go to CatholicRuralLife.com or .org and find these transcripts of his homilies, which are really, really good.